Now then, an Oxford University students group, we all know this story this morning, has voted to remove a portrait of the Queen from its common room because they believe she, quote, represents recent colonial history.
Well, we're joined to discuss this, amongst other things, by the Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Very good morning to you,
morning.
Mr Jenrick.
Good morning.
You know, you as a government have had your own issues about photographs, portraits of the Queen in the background, in interviews, flags and all the rest of it. What do you make of what the students of Magdalen College have done?
Well, this really is student politics, isn't it? So I don't think we should lose too much sleep over this. But as you say, I quite famously now have a portrait of the Queen on the wall of my office in government, as most members of the Cabinet do. And I'm proud to do so. The Queen's held in very high esteem by all of us in this country and indeed around the world. And,
Is this a real insult, to our monarchy and sort of the extremes of cancel culture? Or is this students exercising their democratic right to vote about, you know, who they look up to and exercising their freedom of speech? I mean, they're all young politicians in the making, aren't they?
Well, I don't think we should waste too much time debating what happens in a student common room, frankly. It does seem ridiculous to me.
Unless it says something more broadly about freedom of speech and cancel culture.
You know, students can do what they want to do. I don't think it's for government ministers to weigh into what happens in a student common room at a university somewhere or other.
It's a bit disappointing, though, isn't it, that a bunch of students at one of the best universities on the planet have given as a reason for taking this portrait of the Queen down the fact that she represents the colonial culture, when actually, as we've been saying all morning, she represents the exact opposite, because she has actually sat at the head of the operation to dismantle what was left of empire via the Commonwealth. To get it so completely wrong, I mean, historically completely wrong, is a bit disappointing, isn't it, that these are supposedly the brightest kids in the land?
Well, it does seem, as I say, a bit ridiculous, and it is ignorant. But I think there's probably more important things for us to debate than this. The Queen is held in huge high regard by all of us, or most of us in this country. And we're about to see when the G7 leaders fly into this country today and tomorrow. You'll be seeing them, no doubt, wanting to meet her. Actually, the Queen, President Biden, is going to meet her for the first time as president. She's someone we should be hugely proud of, as people all over the world respect and admire her.
OK.
We have been talking to some locals because of the G7 summit, a little bit frustrated about the pressure locally because of all the security, the accommodation and all the rest of it. Let's talk about how Cornwall is doing. When we were in the European Union, Cornwall accessed 765 million in EU funds. That's over the period of time between 1999 and 2020. It's a huge amount of regional funding that is lost in that area.
No, that's not quite true. We've been very clear that we're going to ensure that each nation of the United Kingdom receives as much, if not more, funding for the sorts of levelling up activities, investments in infrastructure and skills and culture and research and development as they would have done had we remained within the European Union. And I think because we'll be able to set the rules, we should be able to operate those schemes in a much better and more targeted way so that they can have more impact on people's lives. And today, in fact, we're announcing a down payment on that, which is £65 million of investment in Cornwall for town deals, for places that many of your viewers will be familiar with, like Truro and Penzance and Camborne, so that those communities can get that sort of important transformative investment in, I think, cycleways, in town centre regeneration, really good stuff that will help those communities to build back after the pandemic.
Well, would it be fair to say that things aren't exactly fair sailing in the wake of the Brexit vote? We are in this bizarre position, but it indicates a broader problem. We're on the brink of a sausage war with Brussels over this threat to ban the sale of sausages in Northern Ireland. This all goes back to trying to sort out the situation and avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, which means that we now have a situation where we aren't going to be able to export sausages from can call it Good Morning Britain, Great Britain, over to Northern Ireland?
Well, we're not going to let that happen. It would be absurd if sausages made in Birmingham couldn't be dispatched to a supermarket in Belfast. We all agreed that the Northern Ireland would remain within the same customs territory as Great Britain. That's absolutely right. We're one country, after all, and we now need to see a sensible, pragmatic solution. We've put some ideas on the table. Lord Frost, our negotiator, is meeting with his counterpart, Maros Sefcovic, later today, and we hope that the EU will respond in turn and we can bring this to a successful conclusion.
Lord Frost himself has said that you completely underestimated the impact of the protocol on items going over to Northern Ireland. Some suppliers in Great Britain merely not sending their merchandise due to the time-consuming paperwork required. These are his words in the Financial Times. We've seen producers of medicines reducing the provisions, and there may be much less alternative on grocery store cabinets for customers. The Northern Ireland Retail Consortium have warned that when the grace interval ends, supermarkets will face real severe problems. An enormous concern. You completely underestimated what that border in the Irish Sea would do.
Well, what we didn't think would happen is that the EU would apply the agreement in such a rigid manner as they have done, because both sides in the protocol agreed to work in good faith, using best endeavours in the terminology set out in the protocol, to reach sensible conclusions and to work together as this process evolves and we put in place new procedures and so on, so that our relationship can move forwards. Unfortunately, we have seen some pretty unhelpful behaviour from the EU. We hope that will come to an end.
Because they're sticking to the agreement?
No, it's not the agreement. The agreement was clear, actually, that this would evolve, that we would have discussions in good faith, and that we would try to ensure that these situations didn't arise. Both sides committed that Northern Ireland would remain within the customs territory of the United Kingdom, and by implication, that a cancer drug produced in Oxford could move to a GP surgery or hospital in Belfast, and certainly a sausage produced in Bangor in Wales could be enjoyed by somebody in Bangor in Northern Ireland. And we're going to bring this to a conclusion. I hope that Maros Sefcovic and his EU team will work with us in the coming days.
I do want to ask you a couple of questions about where we are with lockdown, because we've had two things really happening overnight. We've had Andrew Lloyd Webber saying that he's going to break the law. He doesn't care what you announce on the 14th and what happens on the 21st. If the restrictions stay in place, he's going to ignore them. And he's basically said to the government, come and arrest me, because I'm going to be inviting as many people as I want into my theatres. Otherwise, they're going to go bust. So I'm going to break the law. We've also had this sort of voluntary lockdown reapplied in the northwest and in the Manchester area. And it's interesting that it's voluntary, isn't it? That this is advice and guidance. It kind of implies that if you'd done it as a matter of the rules, they would have been broken. Do you sense that you're beginning to lose your grip on the public willingness to go along much longer with these restrictions? You've got Lloyd Webber saying what he's saying. You've only got a voluntary lockdown now in Manchester. Does that imply that you were a bit worried that people would simply defy it if you made it mandatory?
No, I don't think so. I think the public have shown huge patience and forbearance in recent months, and of course have been coming forward in very large numbers to get vaccinated, which is the main thing that we can all do to support the national effort. We've seen fantastic figures in the last 48 hours of young people since we opened up the 25 plus category. I think 500,000 young people have registered, booked that appointment to be vaccinated. So there's no sign that public support is fraying. What we do want to do, though, is move to more of a position of us all exercising good judgment, personal responsibility. And so what we're saying to people in Greater Manchester is, please exercise that degree of judgment, think about the contact that you have, the travel that you do, and work with us as we bring in support for contact tracing, going door to door, vaccine buses to make it easier to get vaccinated and so on. And if we can do that, there's every reason to believe we can bring the cases down there, as we have quite successfully in Bolton. thanks to a big effort there by the local population, the NHS and the very good council in Bolton that have helped us.
I notice you haven't dealt with the point about Lloyd Webber. How are you going to deal with that? I mean, you've got a big figure here, a big national figure, almost an icon, who's telling you to get stuffed, basically. He's saying, I'm going to do it my way, starting on the 21st. What are you going to do about that? Just ignore it?
Well, I appreciate his frustration. It's shared by hundreds of thousands of people who work in industries that are still very restricted. Travel industry, for example, certainly culture and parts of hospitality. Yeah, we have worked with Lloyd Webber quite closely over the course of the last year. The Culture Secretary has been in regular contact with him as one of our leading entrepreneurs and figures in the world of theatre. And we want to get those theatres open. But no one wants to keep these restrictions in place for a day longer than is necessary.
What are you going to do? You haven't answered the question, I'm sorry to say. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to respond to what Lloyd Webber said? He's thrown the gauntlet down. What are you going to do as a government?
Well, all I can say to him is to ask him to wait for the decision that the Prime Minister is going to make on the 14th of June. We're reviewing the data right now. It is a finely balanced decision. You can see that scientific opinion is on both sides of the argument. There's definitely positive signs, but there's also caution as well, as we're seeing with rising cases in places like Greater Manchester. So give us the extra time to review the data and then wait to see what the Prime Minister has to say.
If
it's possible to reopen on the 21st of June, of course we'll do that. We'd all love to be going to see Cinderella or other great productions that he and other impresarios are bringing forwards.
OK. Richard was very honest about the fact he's going to France in July. What would you say to him?
Well, the government advice is clear, Richard, and to your viewers. You shouldn't be travelling right now to any country that's on the red list or the amber list. You can travel to the small number of countries that are on the green list. And of course, we would like to expand that list. But if you're booking holidays speculatively to places which are not on the green list, then my advice would be make sure that you can get refunds or you can reschedule, because there's absolutely no guarantee, unfortunately, that countries like France that are not currently on the green list will be next month.
Well, my answer to you, Minister, would be simply that I am going to follow the rules. The amber rules do actually allow me to go to France. I will quarantine faithfully when I get back, as will my wife. We will follow the rules that you have laid down. We won't be bending them. We'll be following them. It's ambiguous. I'm sorry, but the Amber Code is ambiguous. We all know it.
With respect, it isn't ambiguous. Without getting into your individual circumstances, the only reasons to travel to countries on the Amber list would be the most exceptional ones, like you were travelling for very important personal business, like a member of your family was critically ill and you wanted to visit them. If you had to travel for medical treatment, there are diplomatic and aid worker exemptions. You shouldn't be travelling to those countries for holidays, I'm afraid to say.
I'll take that on advice. Thank you very much indeed.